Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate Breakdown for Thursday, June 27th. We're here. We're going to be breaking it down. We have a 4-game slate on DraftKings and 6 games on FanDuel. And with that, I want to remind you the FanDuel slate does start like an hour earlier than normal. So make sure you got your lineups dialed in when that slate starts because it is earlier than general. Now, let's get into today's show. What we're going to do is we will start with the perfect lineups and the winning lineups from yesterday, followed by some pitchers to consider and stacks. It might be a little bit different. I think I should probably use the FanDuel stacking today versus DraftKings just because of the 2 extra games. But we will do our best to talk about all of them, and we will dig into it all. Now, before we move on, come join us at LineStar. Great platform, cheapest, best value in the industry, and we have a couple different ways to come join us for cheap. If you want to try us out and you haven't yet before, you can go through the app stores. You can get a free 7-day trial. If you do not want to do that, we also have some promo offers down there. There are 4 different promo offers. All of them can get you up to 1 month free of LineStar. Just follow the rules, go to our pricing page, and do it through there. All right. Now, let's get into this a little bit. Dig in, see what we got. And FanDuel. Perfect lineup. We had a pretty wild slate yesterday. Gavin Stone was just spectacular. He crushed the White Sox, going at 9 innings, 103 pitches with 7 Ks, no earned runs, gave us 58. What a day. Then we had a 3-man Minnesota stack, 3-man Mets stack, couple one-offs. Judge hit a grand salami yesterday. And Conforto just kind of rounded it out there, had a decent game himself. With the winning lineup going to Sully Brochill, who won 20K. They had Gavin Stone. They had a 4-man Met stack, a 2-man Minnesota, and one off with San Fran and Ohtani. So congrats to Sully. You won 20K. And let's move on to DK now. On DraftKings, we had Matthew Liberatore put up 31. 85 pitches, goes 6 innings and 8 Ks. Just absolutely amazing. He went from 48 to 85. So this is something that would have been incredibly hard to forecast. Even like a near of a ceiling, what he showed would have been, shocking. Him getting 25, I would have been surprised of, and he goes for 32. Congrats to Liberatore. He would have been super, super low owned if you had him. Good work. But if not, no worries because it would have been super low owned. Gavin Stone went absolutely nuts, as we talked about. And then we had a 3-man Mets, 3-man Twins with also one off of Ohtani and Matos. The thing that is interesting is no Aaron Judge. He hit a grand slam and he still does not make the perfect lineup. Then the winning lineup goes to FG Bourne, won by 7 points, had Manaea, had Gavin Stone. Manaea's day got cut short due to the delay, but it was still good enough to win some money. What they had, 5-man Met stack, 2-man Minnesota, 1-man Arizona, so the old 5-2-1 wins again. Now, let's get into today's slate. We'll stay on DraftKings to start for pitching, but I will move to FanDuel to talk about those other pitchers after. So, DraftKings. Now, what do we got here for highest owned? We got Carlos Rodon of the Yankees versus Toronto. I honestly don't mind Rodon in this spot. Look, on a 4-game slate, pitching is just going to be high owned. That's just how it's going to happen. Yeah, you can try and get a little bit different, but it's going to be hard to get too different here. Rodon, 4.37 FIP over his last 20, 4.36 over his last 5. His ERA over the last 5 is it's like a 1.5 lower. So I think that he is due for some regression to the positive. Like a few weeks ago, we were talking about Rodon is probably going to hit some regression. It has happened. I think now we can probably step back in and try and play Rodon in a couple games. And I don't mind this spot. Toronto hasn't been good versus lefties. In the near term, they have been awful versus lefties. 152 average, 30 ISO, 191 WOBA, 22% K rate. This is just terrible, and BVP data heavily favors Rodon in this situation. I don't love Toronto bats today. I generally don't, and I think Rodon's in a great spot. I am extremely interested. Some StatCast data is a little scary here, but all in all, I am fine to play some Rodon. There's a couple righties in that Toronto lineup you got to worry about, but if he can get past them, looks good. Next, we got Jack Flaherty, 9.8K, 2.2x value at 31% ownership. I am fully on board with Flaherty, and honestly, if Flaherty was on a better team, we'd be talking about Cy Young with this guy, or if he just didn't have Skubal in the rotation with him. Tyreek Skubal has just been absolutely spectacular, but Flaherty's been really good. 2.92 ERA on the season. He has a 2.55 FIP over his last 5 games, 3.17 over his last 20. K rate is super high. StatCast data looks good. It's a good matchup versus the Angels. I'm not going to try and overthink this one. I definitely am interested in some Flaherty. Next, we got Andrew Abbott versus the Cardinals. Cardinals aren't a very good hitting team versus lefties. 274 WOBA, 132 ISO. They only strike out at 19%, but that's really the only bad thing in this pitching matchup is just maybe not quite the upside we're used to. Abbott, meanwhile, he's a slightly below average or an average MLB pitcher. He can get it done. He has his games, but most likely he's not going to give you the upside you really need. I'm okay to go there because of the matchup, but I don't love it. And if his ownership gets wild, I'll probably just get off him. Davis Daniel next, 5.5K, 2.4X. He went 61 pitches last time, 91 the start before that. That was 2023. Sorry. Anyways, he's a prospect coming up. He's versus the Tigers. It's a good spot, good matchup. I don't mind trying to take a little bit of the prospect with him being so cheap. Just got to show you that he did only have a 17% K rate last time he was up in the major leagues. However, at least Detroit strikes out a lot. So there is some upside at this price in the strikeout department. So I wouldn't knock him off your board, but also may not have a ton. I think he's probably popping up and showing he's a little more popular than he really will be just due to the price. The consensus projection's a little bit lower than we are. I don't mind going there. Don't love it. Don't hate it. Next, we got Miles Mikolas versus the Reds. So one thing, Reds strike out a lot. They have a low WOBA. Mikolas isn't as good at home, but he does have a nice ceiling kind of when he gets it going here. I don't mind taking some shots here. It's a guy with a FIP of 4 over the last 20, FIP of 3.5 over the last 5. His K rate isn't very high, but at least Cincinnati does K at a decent clip here, and we know when he gets it going, some of those Ks do come around. He had 6 versus Pittsburgh, 5 versus Cubs. Cincinnati strikes out a decent amount. Last year, he had 10 Ks versus them in 7 innings of work. Could it happen again? Absolutely. I don't mind a little bit of Mikolas at a little lower ownership. Next, Jose Barrios. Never want to face the Yankees. He is at home, though. He tends to do a little bit better at home. He's been bad lately, 6.1 FIP over his last 5, 4.52 over his last 20, one of the things that we've seen with Barrios over the last couple of years is he's a little bit inconsistent. So he was pretty good all season last year. The year before, we picked on him a ton. He would have some huge monster ceiling games, but then be absolutely terrible for stretches. And right now, he's been pretty bad. Now, can he snap back a little bit in this game? Absolutely, but I don't love the spot for him and definitely not really trying to force him in. Ben Lively, don't really like the spot for him either. Michael Wacha, I think is probably going a little under-owned here. He's only 7K. Yeah, there's not much strikeout upside here, but he can give you 7 innings, 6, 7 innings, and keep you in this game, only allowing a couple runs. And on a limited 4-game slate, that might be enough. I don't hate trying to go to some Wacha and get a little different there. Next, going over to FanDuel. All right, so we got our six games here, so we will have a couple of extra pitchers to talk about. Zach Wheeler is one of them. He is the highest owned here on FanDuel. Also, for our projections, he is far and away the best pitcher. He is an 11-point projection higher than Corbin Burnes. Then if you look at consensus, he has the highest projection here. I do got to say, I think a projection of 50 is a little wild just because it should be a median projection, and I cannot say that, there's a 50% chance that he's going to get 50. I wouldn't put it that high. Maybe lower that a little bit, but regardless, he is in an absolute great spot. Miami strikes out at 22%. Low WOBA, low ISO. He is averaging almost 47 points per game in 9 home games. Guy is crushing it. He's obviously one of the better pitchers in a game in a very good spot. Do want to bring your attention to BVP. Miami has had a little luck against them earlier this season. They got 6 runs on him, but most of the time he gets over on Miami. There's just a couple blow-up games that he's had versus them. All in all, Wheeler absolutely looks great. Flaherty, love the spot for him. Definitely not shying away from him either. Corbin Burnes is one of those additional pitchers on this slate. Now, I much prefer Flaherty or Wheeler. Burnes is going to be a little bit lower owned. That alone makes him a little more interesting. I don't mind this spot, but I just have reservations because I don't know if he has the ceiling as some of the other guys. I think his most likely outcome is low 40s, which isn't going to kill you, but it's not going to win you a GPP. I think Flaherty and Wheeler clearly have 50-plus point upside, and that is my only reason why I'm not in love with going Burnes. Next, Carlos Rodon. Definitely intrigued to go here. Versus Toronto, who's terrible versus lefties at quite a bit of a cheaper price and way less ownership. Otherwise, some of the other pitchers I'm really not that into on FanDuel. I'm really probably going to stick with these 4 guys. Maybe sprinkle in a little bit of Wacha because he's only 8.5 and has a very, very good chance of quality start and win bonus on FanDuel, which is intriguing. The game, it is a 9 total, but it is pretty much a pick'em with Cleveland just being slight favorites in that game. I don't mind trying to go against Cleveland a little bit. I hate facing them with my pitcher, but really not that many options today. So we got to kind of pick our poison here. Now let's get into some stacks. All right, highest ceiling of the day. Highest ceiling goes to Baltimore versus John Gray. John Gray has been very good this year, so I got to put that out right away. I don't love picking on him. However, Baltimore has crushed righties, and can they get to Gray? Absolutely. So Baltimore firmly in the player pool, very high ceiling. Philadelphia versus Trevor Rogers popping up. You gotta like that one as well. It is interesting that our highest ceiling both will not be on the DraftKings slate. Cincinnati's popping up, which will be, and it is versus Mikolas. This is a spot where I don't mind playing both sides. Mikolas is very good at limiting runs and working deeper into games, being efficient, but he can definitely get got, and Cincinnati is powerful enough to do that. Anything else here popping up for the DraftKings slate? Pretty much all Cincinnati. Yep, New York and Cleveland popping up as well. They obviously need to be in your player pool stack-wise as well. I think both are in a good spot. And Cleveland does have the highest implied total probably on this slate. Or that or Philadelphia. Now, let's get into highest owned stacks. Now, ownership is going to be way different on DraftKings with only 4 games. This number is just going to be much higher. But we do have Detroit Tigers coming in versus Davis Daniel. Davis Daniel's a prospect. Don't truly know what you get there, but I would say the Tigers are definitely interesting based on Daniel's 501 FIP from his 3 starts last year. Philadelphia popping up, absolutely interesting versus Trevor Rogers. FIP, mid-4s. Philadelphia has been hot. You could definitely get those stacks going. Now, Detroit is on that DraftKings slate, so something you should definitely consider there if you're on DraftKings. Now, highest projected. We got Philly. We got New York. I think New York is super interesting. Yankees versus Berrios. Berrios hasn't been good. 6.1 FIP over his last 5. Yankees bats are hot. Judge just hits a home run every day. And his team is absolutely interesting. Baltimore is, Cleveland, all very intriguing. Now let's check out the value stacks. St. Louis popping up against Andrew Abbott. That makes a lot of sense to me. Andrew Abbott, 5.28 FIP over the last 5, 4.93 over the last 20. St. Louis has been hitting the ball a little bit better lately. Now, they're not great versus lefties, but not much ownership going hit their way. And even in a 4-game slate, this ownership's probably going to be pretty low. Value rating is pretty solid too. So using them, you can probably still get up and get some higher priced pitchers fairly easily and set yourself up there. Philadelphia is popping up. Toronto versus Carlos Rodon. Rodon's been in a regression period here, so maybe Toronto can get to him once again. However, they just haven't been good versus lefties, so that scares me a little bit. And let's check out the matchup as a whole. All right, so Cleveland and Kansas City are the 2 highest implied totals. Waka, Ben Lively, both are giving up a decent amount of hard contact and average exit velocity. I do have to bring up this bullpen, though. KC's bullpen is clearly worse. Now, Waka usually does work deeper into the game, giving you less time to get at that bullpen, whereas Lively probably doesn't make it quite as deep. Cleveland's absolutely interesting. KC's fine. Philadelphia, I like. Detroit is very interesting. New York, I think, it might get a little slept on here, and they're in a very interesting spot. And then Baltimore is obviously in play. If we take out, let's see, Baltimore, Texas, Miami, and Philadelphia, then St. Louis you got to consider, I think, as a lower owned stack. And then Toronto. Those would probably be, or Cincinnati as well, my low-owned kind of leverage stacks would absolutely be in play. But on a 4-game slate, I mean, you can't really be canceling out a stack. And in fact, leaning into the leverage is probably the way to go. All right, guys, that will do it for us today. A quick one. We will be back tomorrow with a bigger slate and some big-time money to win. Have a good one, guys. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.